Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Exploring New Citrix Technology Additions. My name is Bill Sutton, and I'm the Practice Director of the Modern Workspace Practice at XenTegra, and your host for today. We have two panelists with us today to deliver much of the content. Eric, can you move to the next slide? So on the panel today, in addition to myself, is Jeff Olson. Jeff is the Director of Sales for the Citrix portion of the Modern Workspace practice. And then we also have Era Akian, and hopefully I said that right, Era, who is the Senior Director of Account Technology Strategist at Citrix. You'll be hearing a lot more from them in a few minutes, but first, I have to go through the obligatory XenTegra slides. So if you can move to the next slide, Era, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So who is XenTegra? This is, like I said, the XenTegra portion is the first part of today's presentation, and I'm just going to cover a little bit about XenTegra for those of you who may not be familiar with us, or to refamiliarize you if you already know who we are. I promise I'll be brief so we can get to the content that you're looking for. So who is XenTegra? XenTegra is a value-added reseller headquartered in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. It was founded in 2012 by a gentleman named Andy Whiteside. Many of you have probably heard of him. He was a former Citrix sales engineer who felt like that the partner community wasn't really serving customers and partners the way they should, and he thought he could create a better partner, and so he went off and created XenTegra in 2012. XenTegra started off as just one organization, but we have grown into multiple companies in other parts of the world, including Canada and India, which I'll touch on in a moment. Jump ahead, Era. So the company itself was born out of this concept, the need for customer enablement and true partnership. This was Andy's mantra when he started the company, to focus specifically on helping companies, businesses with their Citrix environments. But as we'll see as I go through this portion, the company has grown significantly into other areas of technology. Next slide. So we were started off as a small business in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we are now a global company. But we like to think that we have a next door feel. We have resources, those little blue pins that are on the screen. That's where we have either sales or consulting or engineering or sales engineering resources. As you can see, they're all over the country. A large portion of the U.S. really heavily concentrated in the Southeast or in the East. We also, like I mentioned, have a Canadian subsidiary, XenTegra Canada, and then we have an Indian subsidiary in India, XenTegra India. Those companies operate independently in the sense that they serve those markets. So XenTegra Canada serves the Canadian market and India serves the Indian market. But we can also leverage resources from those organizations to provide nearshoring and offshoring capabilities to our clients. Next slide. So we established a mission statement a number of years ago, and as most of you, if you've dealt with that before, you have a tendency to revise them over time. This is our latest one, and this is really defines at a high level what we really do with customers, and that is to engage, listen, and deliver enterprise tech to clients of all sizes. This kind of goes back to the thing that I said about Andy and his desire to enable customers. But we believe that every organization, regardless of size, really deserves access to the same type of technology that is being used in the enterprise. And to that end, next slide, we're striving to be a VAR 2.0. Some of you may have heard that term. If you've been around Andy, I'm sure you've heard it. But where we see we're adding value and how we do that, I'll get to in just a second. But we focus on what really matters, and that's our client success. We're not a transactional partner. We're not here to sell you a license or sell you a widget and then go away for a year and then come back again and sell you the renewal on that. We do that, sure, but that's not all we do. We reinvest in customers in a number of ways, and how we do that follows. Next slide. One way we do that is by building community, which goes back to the earlier slide that I mentioned about enablement. We have lots of fun and educational events across the country. We do podcasts with industry experts, a lot of podcasts. You can see the little square boxes on the screen there that are some of the podcasts that we do. Some of them are done weekly, some of them are done semi-monthly, and some are done monthly. In addition, we have events like this, webinars. We also do a lot of in-person events around the country on various technologies, including Citrix, of course. We have a few events coming up in the next couple of months, lunch events around the Citrix technologies. I'd encourage you to go to XenTegra.com/events or XenTegra.com/podcasts to see the events and podcasts respectively that we are running with. Next slide. Another way we serve the community and demonstrate our commitment as a VAR 2.0 is by providing heavily discounted conference passes. And this can be any major industry conference. We will help customers get to these conferences for 90% off the sticker price. We took probably, I think it was 16 to 18 customers to Microsoft Ignite last year. We're taking a bunch of customers to Agile Now and Next coming up in a few weeks. We've taken a few customers to HIMSS that is next week. So again, if you're interested in this, go to XenTegra.com/conference. Next slide. In addition, we also do micro assessments, and these are for all the major technologies that we sell and support. Citrix is a big one. We do micro assessments around Citrix DAS, Citrix CFAD, virtual apps and desktops, as well as NetScaler. We have our highly experienced solution architects come in and spend 4 to 6 hours with the customer reviewing their environment and putting together a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats assessment document. It's actually a spreadsheet that then is delivered to the customer to help show them where they may need to make some changes to enhance performance or security, or availability, et cetera. These are complementary, and typically we'll do them for prospects, and for customers, we'll do them as well on a routine basis to make sure their environment is healthy. Next slide. As a traditional VAR, we provide a lot of the things that are on the right-hand side of the screen there. We are a one-stop shop for managed services. We can do hosted services where we host your environment, your delivery environment, whether that's a Citrix environment or whether that's just hosting, like managing your Intune, and managing that from a holistic perspective. We do post-sales professional consulting. Of course, we offer Citrix support contracts. That's something that every Citrix customer should be interested in. We become your front line for issues related to any issues that you encounter related to Citrix. I mentioned nearshoring and offshoring, and then of course we are a reseller, traditional reseller, and can resell and help you with renewals. Next slide. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that we've moved far beyond the days of where we were doing 100% Citrix. We still do a great deal of Citrix. It's a large portion of our business, and certainly something that we're not diminishing at all. But we've added a lot of these other capabilities, as you can see in those boxes. Managed services, which I mentioned, modern applications, which is focused on ServiceNow and Salesforce. Security and networking, pretty self-explanatory. Modern data center, led by Philip Sellers, focused on hyperconverged technology and backup and recovery. Modern workspace is the practice that I lead, that's focused on end-user computing, application delivery, et cetera. And then we have an SMB subsidiary called XenTegra One that handles IT needs for smaller businesses, typically those of 250 users or less. And then the final slide. I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about XenTegra Cares. This is our organization, or within our mission, if you will, within the organization, to work with you, our customers and clients, our partners, and others to do good local community work, serve the community. In addition, XenTegra Cares also helps nonprofits acquire technology at substantial discounts from our partners, and we can assist with services for nonprofits who may not have the IT capabilities of the larger organizations, to bring them the type of IT capabilities that a lot of larger organizations are used to. So this is the organization within the company that helps give back and assist nonprofits. So I told you I'd be quick. That's all I have. I'm going to hand it over to Era now, Era and Jeff, to talk about the Citrix content that we're going to cover today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. And I want to set a little bit of context for the discussion today, and introduce Ara in about a minute or so. But for those of you who don't know me, I came from Citrix. I was there for about 19 years in various roles, various capacities. Saw the company evolve and grow. with many, with help from a lot of the customers probably on this line. But, I think an important point, when Citrix went private back in late 22, I think there was probably a lot of confusion around what was happening. I think, when companies go private, they look at, hey, they're gonna reduce this, they're gonna reduce that, they're gonna eliminate this, eliminate that, and there was clearly change at Citrix, but I think it's really important for everybody to understand that, Citrix is continuing to make significant investments in the technology platform that they're bringing to their customers and to the market, and I think it's really evolving into a truly end-to-end application delivery framework as you look at what Citrix is bringing to the marketplace. And so for the customers that are out there, thank you for the continued support, from the XenTegra and from the Citrix perspective. But we wanted to showcase today that over the last probably year, Citrix has made some really strategic investments that are helping enable businesses in more ways than I think everybody is used to from the traditional day-to-day Citrix around app delivery, around app desktops, and around app virtualization and NetScaler. So I'll hand it over to Ara, but I think it's important to for everybody to understand that Citrix is continuing to invest. They're continuing to make the technologies better, which is ultimately going to help run your businesses and help your businesses succeed and help your IT team succeed. So without further ado, Ara, I'll hand it off to you because I know you have some great content to cover.
Appreciate that, Jeff. And Bill, Jeff, thank you so much for the opportunity here. Again, for the audience participating with us here today, thank you as well. We'll talk about a variety of different things. It's wonderful to see the philanthropic side of XenTegra, as well as the overall delivery of where XenTegra focuses with customers. Again, continuing to look at application delivery. I'm going to roll us back here a little bit just to take a look at what we talk about in terms of the market as well as customer priorities. Jeff continued to touch on a very important element, again, when we look at things like application delivery. If I look at the left-hand side, whether it's devices, locations, developers, the right-hand side in terms of where our applications reside, whether it's clouds, data center, SaaS or web. Again, each of these elements represent how applications and users continue to come together. If we look at some bubbles, again, this was a study that was taking place by Gartner roughly about 2 years to date. Interesting, some of the projections that they had. By 2024, obviously recognizing that workers would actually carry 4 different types of devices. I have to admit, I am definitely guilty of this. I am at 4 now, and that just includes devices that I manage from a day in, day out perspective. Again, if you continue to look at the elements that you interact with, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, desktop, laptop, as well as things like a VDI or published application, these numbers really start to become very meaningful quickly. If we look at the locations, the pandemic showed us a great example of this, where again, we saw locations continue to move, whether it was users working from their home office, users being in work office, users potentially just being out even in vacation type areas where they were interacting at that point as well. Having security around just VPN technology in general has continued to proliferate very quickly. And we'll talk more about what we mean by zero trust and what that network access element looks like. When we look at developers today, developers continue to ingrain more and more from a job role perspective. I was speaking to my youngest son, and we're in the midst of going through college tours right now to figure out what we want to do. And software development is one of the key areas that he's very much interested in. So I don't want to stifle it because it is matching what we're seeing from a growth year as well. From a cloud perspective, look, we're in 2025. And these numbers are looking to be pretty accurate in terms of 51% of IT spend being aligned from what traditional solutions look like to public cloud. So look, when we look at the hyperscalers, we're continuing to make investments in it. We're continuing to find that customers are looking at solutions, whether they're in the hyperscaler as well as their own data center, or maybe even spreading out across multiple hyperscalers as well. Finally, data center and data center applications. Through 2027, we are continuing to see and will continue to see 50% of critical enterprise apps residing outside of the public cloud as well. So again, this still represents a healthy 70% of workloads. And then finally, the SaaS spend from an IT perspective is naturally going up as well. Again, when we look at the different vendors out there taking their applications, SaaSifying them as well, again, if that's terminology that's in our English language today. In addition to that, we're also seeing the large application delivery providers as well, taking their applications and delivering it in that fashion, whether it's happening within the healthcare space, whether it's happening even just within the traditional office space as well. If we look at the applications in general, Windows still continues to dominate. And as SaaS continues to grow, we are still seeing this separation in terms of elements here. And it's amazing to see, as much as we said 5 years ago, 7 years ago, the Windows applications are going to go away, they're not going away that fast, which means we're still living in this hybrid world between applications that are delivered via Windows as well as applications that are delivered via browser. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Our most simple approach is securing application delivery from a Citrix perspective. Again, if you look at what I just talked about, you look at the different elements. My goal is to take users and applications and bring them closer together. When we bring them closer together, there's a variety of different technologies that take place here. However, if I just take a single user and multiply that out across different vectors for those users, whether they're employees, contractors, partners, and then ultimately inject a variety of different endpoints, now I've really changed that left-hand side of the screen pretty dramatically. If I look at the right-hand side, just looking back at some of those Gartner studies that we talked about, and again, just looking at it from an industry as a whole, applications have changed. And then in concert with that, the application locations have changed as well. So by taking each of these 4 elements, now I run into the situation of how am I going to continue to make this more successful? Now, if the world stopped there and I only had to deal with these 4 elements, it's probably a little bit easier to be able to control. However, what's really happened in the center is this. It's a spaghetti mix of a variety of different acronyms from an industry perspective. And each of these different acronyms, as you see them, have introduced different elements to accomplish different things. Some of them may be related to security. Some of them may be related to contextual access associated with users. Some of them are wrapped around how a user should go leverage an application as a whole. So, since the applications have moved on the right-hand side, as you're seeing here, there is no one perfect solution in terms of delivering those applications. But is there? Simply in the sense that, again, if I can ensure that the users on the left-hand side have a very consistent approach to those applications on the right-hand side, I can really start to simplify things like agent sprawl or application sprawls that exist on the left-hand side. In addition to that, on the right-hand side, since those applications are continuing to move, I want to make sure that I'm not losing any of my security elements that I've initially deployed. So again, when most people look at Citrix from a technology, they'll think, hey, you know what, that's that VDI technology that I'm leveraging, and I'm basically taking my applications and delivering them from the data center. If that was the case, we'd probably end this webinar pretty quick because I wouldn't have anything more to talk about because that technology is almost 30 years old, if not longer. However, the reality is the fact that because those applications have continued to change on the right-hand side, we've introduced additional technologies that can be leveraged as part of a holistic solution. And what do we mean by that? Well, there's that first bubble that we just talked about a little bit just a few moments ago in terms of EDI and DAS. But then there's a variety of other technologies that take place here. As Jeff has mentioned, even going private as an organization and becoming a technology solution for customers with a private name, again, not on Wall Street, we've still taken the benefits of application delivery and expanded on them. We'll show what that timeline looks like, but it's been pretty tremendous in terms of just the last year alone, just looking at some of those areas. If we look at these 4 major areas that we continue to focus on, cost savings, security, experience, and a competitive advantage, it allows us to do all 4 of those things while focusing on a Citrix platform. And that Citrix platform is not limited to visibility. It still allows us to see everything that's taking place from the client side all the way through those different endpoints. And then finally, regardless of where those applications are delivered, ensuring to say, this is what's been accessed, this is what the performance looks like for that end user. And then more importantly, whether the application is residing in your data center or residing in a public facility, ensuring that now the user doesn't have to transform how they leverage applications directly. So, what does that really look like? Well, if I go double click on that middle box that we saw in the previous slide that showed all of those Citrix technologies, it allows us to do these 4 areas of security. It allows us to ensure identity and posture. Again, looking at that endpoint and identifying, hey, look, does that endpoint have something that I need to be concerned about? In addition to that, looking at it from a context awareness perspective. Are they coming from a location that is expected? Are they accessing an application that makes sense? And more importantly, are they doing something that just doesn't align with their traditional use cases? As both of those elements are taking place, and then I look at that bottom left, I'm looking at that continuous enforcement because I can go do that enforcement in the beginning once a user signs on. But now if things start to change or that user starts becoming malicious in nature, I need to start pulling back that access very, very quickly. And then finally, and this is probably one of the most important areas, how do I ensure if that user is coming in from a device that has a limited amount of trust, or the user is coming from a location that has a limited amount of trust? I can reduce my risk by providing them the least privileged access possible so that they can still do their role, but I'm not putting the organization at risk in terms of that application delivery. So, we've talked a lot about technology. Let's talk a little bit about what this really starts to look like. Because as I mentioned before, we have things from application delivery. And application delivery, most people typically think from a virtual application perspective or virtual desktop. This is an example where we take that same technology and now deliver it natively as well. This is not new for us. This has been something that's been in our portfolio for a number of years, but we continue to introduce it to customers so that they realize, hey, I don't need to always deliver my application through VDI technology or through virtual apps and desktops technology. I can also deliver it natively as well. So if you have an application that's super friendly from a browser perspective, I could take advantage of that, but at the same time, inject all of those security benefits that I have within Citrix, things like screen scraping technology, things like keyboard loggers, and a bunch of other elements that take place in the background, including things like watermarking, so that when the user accesses that application, and keep in mind, when we're accessing that application, we're doing it in the same fashion as that user leveraging our workspace agent or our workspace client for a variety of different endpoints to be able to provide this benefit. So again, when I see a customer and a customer is trying to figure out, hey, do I need to go take that application and put it in my virtual environment? The answer is, let's find out. Let's find out if that's where your application and where your users reside. If that application is residing outside of your data center, this becomes a fantastic technology to still keep that security that you want on that endpoint while still ensuring a zero trust approach. So again, continuing to provide that level of access from a security perspective. I promised I would get to this, and I'm moving a little bit faster here simply because when we park on this slide, I could probably spend at least a half hour on this slide alone. If we look at the time frame here, this takes us back roughly about a year from to date. If we're a year to date, and we're on the heels of the end of February here, we started almost a year ago with our acquisition for Uber Agent. And we'll talk about what that looks like. But if I continue to move from that top left part of the slide that you're seeing all the way to the bottom right, we made an acquisition of a company called Unicon. We'll talk about what each of these things are and how they apply to you as a customer. But if I had to show on the slide all the other things that we did as well, it would be quite an eye chart. So let's talk a little bit about what those first 3 items look like on the left-hand side, and I promise we'll get back to the other 3 columns. So first and foremost, Uber Agent. Absolutely amazing technology. Why is this so important to us? The reason why it's so important is that it helps us and it helps you as administrators, as security folks that are responsible for endpoints and identifying what's happening there, what it looks like from that user's endpoint all the way to the application. So we do this through a variety of different techniques. As you're seeing here, you see the different platforms that are supported, continuing to work well for us. We take all of that data and we share it right back to you. Our goal is not to own this data. Our goal is to make sure that you as a customer, you as a consumer, have the ability to go identify that and then build appropriate reports behind that. If I go look at the value that this provides, this is just calling out about half a dozen different ones. There's even more in terms of what you can do with this. But at the most simplistic form, think of it in the sense that I identify what the application performance looks like, and more importantly, what the user is doing from that endpoint. Now, most would say, hey, don't you have that visibility within Citrix? You have the ability to do things like analytics, whether they're performance-based, whether they're security-based. The answer is yes. However, when the application is sitting in that virtual environment, I have the ability to do that. When the application is sitting outside of the virtual environment, Uber Agent solves that for us. So again, this gives you an idea where if I want to take that level of same visibility and then bring it back into, bring it outside of ADI and then bring it all the way down to the endpoint, this is our solution to do it. And this is, again, part and parcel to those offerings. We'll talk about what it looks like in terms of different platform opportunities here as well. So if you remember the second item that was on there, we had NetScaler on that slide chart as well that showed the different things. So we've taken NetScaler and we've simplified it and demystified it at the same time. What do I mean by that? So I'll be honest, I came over actually from the NetScaler side. So to be able to say that we've demystified this is pretty amazing. We had a data sheet that was probably about 15 pages long, maybe 20 pages long, and it had a variety of different platforms. For those of you that were with us, we had things like Pay As You Grow, where we took the same platform, we expanded it, creating maybe 6 or 8 different license tiers within that platform. And then at the same time, we also introduced maybe half a dozen different platforms. So right there, 6 times 6, I'm already up to 36 flavors of our same platform. It becomes a mess very, very quickly. And then often when we have to sit down with the customer and determine like, hey, what do you need from a technology standpoint? This is an example of that where we filtered that pretty dramatically. Small appliance, large appliance. That's what we found for most customers. By the way, the small will still do 100 gigabits in terms of capacity. So it's still quite a bit in terms of what we see within customers. So what's the second thing we did? Well, we did what we refer to as our 3+3+1 program. Now, I'm not looking to make this hard math. We can clearly see that adds up to 7. And what does that mean to us? Well, what it means to us, or means to you as customers for this technology, you get 3 years of feature development. You get 3 years of maintenance. By the way, you're still getting maintenance in the first 3. And then finally, you get your 1 year that continues after all of that with all the security updates as well. So as a result, our firmware now extends out for 7 years from the time of launch. For those of you that have been very familiar with things like our LTSR releases on the Citrix software front, this is a great example where we've taken that same functionality and brought it into NetScaler. This is very unheard of in the networking realm. If you look at the networking realm, they probably want to hold on to software anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and then that's it. They want to close the chapter, move on to the next build. In the world of IT, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to do a software rollout and then do the next one 3 years later is aggressive. It's very, very challenging. And then the networking area becomes even harder. So this is our way to help customers continue down that path so that they have longevity with software versions from a platform perspective. What's the third thing we did? EOL simplification. EOL simplification is, frankly, what we refer to as end of life. This is an industry term. We didn't create it. However, what we did do is we've taken all of our platforms since 2024, and we introduced what's referred to as lifetime RMA. Lifetime RMA makes this very, very easy for customers to consume in that when I purchase a new platform, that platform has next day advanced replacement from a business day perspective with the replacement. So again, it makes it very, very simple for me to predict, hey, this is the length of time that I have for a platform. This is where I want to continue within my environment. Again, looking at NetScaler, continuing to demystify it. At the same time of all of this, we also took NetScaler and ensured customers to be able to go leverage this from a platform perspective as well. Well, what do I mean by that? We've taken our enterprise solutions and brought them together for customers because we saw many customers continuing to consume these technologies together. Whether it was things like our Citrix virtual app, virtual desktop, or even customers taking things like their management plane, bringing it into DAS as well, giving customers those capabilities as well, where again, they would stay evergreen in their environments. We took the same functionality with NetScaler and then brought the two of them together. Today, when we go to market, you start to see situations like this where these two technologies come together and resonate for customers. Many customers will do this where they'll take things like their Citrix virtual app, virtual desktop platforms, and then introduce NetScaler as part of that gateway functionality. But then at the same time, bringing in things like load balancing as well as application delivery controller functionality. When we bring those two worlds together, customers really start to get economies of scale because now as a result, I can go deliver both of those technologies at a more realistic delivery pricing versus treating them as two separate elements. As a result, from these two, now the customers where they have added expenditures across a variety of different competitive landscapes, now they can fold all of that under the same capability. Now, on that previous slide where you saw the hardware, I can either deliver the same technology, whether it's through software residing on our platforms that we deliver to you as customers, or you just continue to run it on your own existing servers, or you bring it out to public cloud as well. So again, lots of flexibility, and we still continue to maintain that single code base approach. I'm going to move over from an education standpoint because education was that last area that we saw in that first pillar. Education has continued to be around us in terms of everything we do. If you remember in the past, Citrix focused on delivering education through our partners, obviously looking for assistance to be able to go do more with customers. However, one of the things that we found was that customers still continued to lean on us in terms of ensuring we're pushing that information out as well. So what do I mean by this? We've just focused on these three areas alone, where if I look at things like blogs, alerts, we've even taken things like our Citrix status in terms of updating customers to recognize what's happening from a roadmap perspective, and you can go take advantage of that data as well. And that continues to get updated across all of our platforms. So if you're ever wondering like, hey, what's happening from a Citrix perspective, go take advantage of things like our Citrix roadmap that's available online as well. From a unified community perspective, we've taken many of our different demonstrations that we deliver to customers, and we have these on regular intervals, and we've taken it across all of our different platforms, and we've brought these together as well. The last area in terms of training was probably one of our biggest launches, and this took place over the last, I'll say the last 12 months, because it's been an ongoing event in terms of adding more and more modules. And I'll talk about one of the most recent ones that we introduced there. But our training content we injected through Pluralsight as well. And Pluralsight is an online forum where customers, as well as anyone, can go take advantage of that education. And that link is available right off of our citrix.com site as well. So again, if you're looking for, hey, how do I go configure this? Or how do I go convert configurations from, let's say, my competitive landscape to my NetScaler landscape? Again, there are training modules in there for it. If I want to be able to understand more in terms of how Uber Agent works, and I want to be able to get more education on that, I can go out to Pluralsight as well. So as we continue to make more and more of those acquisitions, that functionality in turn has been brought into Pluralsight. So let's get back to that pillar slide, because that pillar slide showed quite a bit there, because so far, I've only taken you through this first column in terms of the things that we've done. These next two columns we're going to talk about a little bit more, and I'm going to park ourselves on this slide simply because there's quite a bit more to talk about here. If we look at what we've done from an LTSR perspective, again, just looking back, our 2402 release took place in April last year. Again, for customers that are on this call, if you're still sitting on 1912, please, please, please make sure that you're advancing forward. 1912 has stopped from a support perspective. We will continue to help you in terms of identifying if you need to figure out what that migration strategy needs to look like. Please work with XenTegra to identify what that migration strategy should look like. But this is an example where we want to make sure that you're moving away from that and continuing to stay on your current software releases. Again, no more releases or updates happening on 1912. If we look at what we did from a May perspective, we call out things like storefront UI updates. At the same time as that time frame a year ago, we also launched, and again, to put everything here in terms of the functionality I mentioned before, it would look like an eye chart. This is an example where year to date, we also launched our NetScaler capability to provide additional gateway protection. And this was an example where we put things like our firewall functionality in front of gateway. So for customers that are out there, again, if you're not taking advantage of this and you have gateways deployed within your environment today, where maybe you're not using things like gateway service, then take advantage of that NetScaler capability where you can introduce the WAF functionality and provide additional security protections. Nobody ever wants to talk about this stuff, but again, security events take place, security alerts take place. Everybody's like, hey, is it Patch Tuesday? Is that date coming up? This is an example where, again, if you look at some of the defense mechanisms that existed in the past, very often we would recommend for customers, make sure that you're keeping up to date from a firmware. Security events take place, make sure that you're staying up to date there as well. Our capability in terms of things like encrypted signatures, onboard gateway, or NetScaler platforms as you know it, gives you that capability as well. So that again, if I look at my order of operations, I filter those two things out to make sure I stop requests at the edge before they reach gateway and they reach the authentication mechanisms. If I continue down that second pillar for us, the second pillar, the very bottom one, there is XenServer for us. So we've heard a lot of rumblings from the industry perspective, variety of different vendors out there from a hypervisor perspective, and the prices have gone up. As a result, look, some of them have gotten acquired, and as a result, customers are running to a situation where they're seeing like 1,000% increase on their renewal bills. We've taken XenServer, we've continued to keep that into our premium offerings from a licensing standpoint. As you can see here, for customers that are on private cloud, or they're on universal hybrid cloud, or they're on the platform license, again, any flavor of that, they can go take advantage of our XenServer capability. XenServer is completely supported for any of the virtual app, virtual desktop workloads. So again, anything that you're delivering from a Citrix perspective, go take advantage of that XenServer licensing and take advantage of that cost savings. So again, now I don't have to add that additional tax in for delivering VDI technology down to my users. If I go move over to this next column, now we start getting more in terms of where we're at today in terms of DaaS functionality into Workspace's core. For many, many years, we had a lot of functionality in Azure. We've looked for ways to be able to go bring more of that functionality into the other clouds. This is an example where we've done this with AWS, and we've introduced Workspace's core into that environment as well. So for customers that are very comfortable in terms of that goodness, like the benefits that we provide from our protocol perspective, and more importantly, those security elements, they can go take advantage of that into AWS. For your Mac customers, we did not forget about you. In September last year, we introduced our VDA from a Mac OS perspective, and this brought the same functionality. So for customers that don't want to send their users home with their Mac devices, and again, they have things like desktops, where it's a little hard to bring home, and maybe that's a $6,000 or $7,000 system that I don't want to put under someone's arm to go take home. I can go now park that in the data center and now take advantage of the VDA that's available for that. So again, great functionality with that. If we look at our integration that we did with Microsoft, again, in the November timeframe of last year, we did quite a bit here in terms of our Win365 integration. Now, if you look at what's happening from a Microsoft ecosystem perspective, a lot of integration that continues to happen here. And with that integration, for customers where they're delivering, whether it's through things like WinAVD or they're delivering through Win365, our functionality layers right on top of that and now extends those same capabilities. It can be extended through things like HDX Plus, where they have capabilities from our protocol that are rendered right down to that system. And now the same capabilities in terms of control come back to those Citrix administrators as well. So I'm now going to shift over into that last column here, just in terms of where we've been from an acquisition perspective yet again. And this now brings us from the December timeframe right up through current. So what do we have here? The first one from a device trust perspective. You remember that world that we talked about a little bit earlier? This is the world in terms of ensuring I have things like zero trust focused on the endpoints. Device trust continues to help us there. It continues to help us wrap the security around those endpoints to determine what those users are doing, and more importantly, the levels of access that they have. Now, device trust is one of those technologies that we're taking and bringing right back into the fold with our Citrix delivery mechanisms. So if you remember on that previous slide where we showed the different platform licenses, device trust becomes part of that entitlement that comes right into those customers. Strong Networks is the next acquisition that we made, and this was very beneficial for those developers. If you remember that story we talked about a little bit earlier, this is the one where I mentioned my son studying from a college standpoint, and we talked about the growth for application developers. The biggest challenge that we run into with customers in terms of what's happening with my developer community, what are they doing? How are they interacting with the system, and how much access is too much access? Strong Networks helps puts parameters around that. It helps us apply those parameters so that, again, as those developers are continuing to leverage those systems, they have a sandbox to stay within, and now I'm not delivering the entire kingdom to them in terms of access. Now, if we stopped here, this would take us basically through 2024. And I have to tell you, just looking at what we've accomplished so far, it's been pretty tremendous. The last one was our biggest announcement, and this was in late January. And this is what we refer to as our Unicon acquisition. And Unicon allowed us to have that end-to-end experience from a user standpoint. So what do I mean by this? Unicon basically provides us endpoint controls and really introduce more of a sandbox experience all the way to the endpoint. Now, some folks might look at that and say, wait, that's thin client technology. And now you're introducing hardware into your solution. Nope, there is no hardware with this. This is a pure software solution. We've partnered with a variety of different vendors here, by the way. So there's a handful of different well-known vendors, again, whether it's HP, whether it's Dell, whether it's Lenovo, again, different vendors creating different platforms. And as a result, the Unicon software gets dropped on there. So what does this mean to you as a customer? Well, very often we run in situations where we continue to do updates around things like our workspace agent or our workspace client. This is where you go out and you download your Citrix software and you go install it. Now, if it's things like mobile devices, super easy, tablets, super easy, desktop, laptops, works out really, really well. When you start getting to the world in terms of thin clients, those thin client vendors need to interoperate and ensure they consume that software as well. And sometimes the versions might trail a little bit. Sometimes customers might already have hardware that they want to be able to go redeploy. Unicon helps those customers in terms of doing that redeployment and at the same time, keep you evergreen from a Citrix client perspective as well. So this is an example where you'll see both technologies come together and allow those endpoints operating all the way through part of that Citrix environment as well. So this brings us to the end of where we're at today. If I told you we're stopping here today, we are not. There's so much more that we're going to be delivering. And again, all of this functionality continues to get delivered to customers, whether they are doing net new renewals with us or they're in the middle of their contract. So I do ask, again, if you're looking at any of these technologies for the first time so far, please work with our friends here with XenTegra as well as your account teams to go identify, hey, how do I get a better understanding of how that technology comes together and how it can help me solve some of my business challenges? Because I bet you a lot of the technologies that are probably here today have some overlap with some of the existing technologies that you already have. And frankly, you're probably already licensed for it today in terms of the capabilities here. Jeff, Bill, that brings us to the end of our content here. And let's see what we have from a question perspective.
Sure. We've got one question in here, Era. There's actually two now. The first one is Strong Networks. Can it help as a privileged access management solution?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Strong Networks actually can help in terms of still providing the access that's needed for developers, but at the same time, it's also going to still sandbox them. And basically what I mean by that is there's two parts to that. The first part is in terms of ensuring the developer has what they need from a functionality standpoint, but it doesn't have all the exposure that's on the other side for it. So again, that's part of the benefits of strong networks, as well as, again, if they're doing development outside Citrix environments, they can go take advantage of that. Okay.
Great.
Let's see.
Second question is, how is Unicon licensed as part of the Citrix licensing models? Is it included in UHMC and the platform license?
It is. It is. So for Unicon,
Okay.
for us today, that combination license is available for both solutions. And for customers, as I mentioned, if you're trying to figure out how we can take some endpoints, maybe start to repurpose them, re-provision them, Unicon becomes a great solution for that. And the hardware requirements are relatively light. So again, it could be pretty compelling pretty quickly.
Great. Thank you for those questions. Thanks, Era. Any other questions? We'll give the participants another 30 seconds or so. Any final thoughts, Era, Jeff?
Hey, Ara, I have one question around Unicon. As it relates to the licensing, if one of our clients or a client wanted to go get access, is it a immediate download executable? Do they have to do something to gain access to it? How would they access it in a midterm of their existing, let's say, UHMC agreement?
Great question. So we've been continuing to roll out access to these different solutions as we acquire them today, and then align them to the Citrix ecosystem. So typically what we've recommended for customers where there are net new technologies that have been introduced into our portfolio, work with us. Identify which technology makes sense. We've done a variety of different proof of demonstrations. And the reason why I refer to it as a proof of demonstration is that it gives you the opportunity from a customer to ensure you're getting the best experience possible. Again, if I look at from an education standpoint, some of these technologies that we've acquired had some content that was already out there. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, in terms of Pluralsight, our goal is to get all of that information into Pluralsight so customers can really get an understanding what that technology looks like, number one, and number two, be able to go deploy it. But we also want to make sure that they get the best experience possible. So that's why it's probably just as easy, engage with us and go use that as part of that functionality.
Era, we got one more question. Will SIM, I believe that's Citrix and Endpoint Management, be able to manage Unicon as part of device management?
That's a great question. I do need to follow back up on that because I don't know how much of that functionality is there out of the box. Some of the acquisitions that we've made here have been very strong and strategic partners with us. So it's probably more of a question of checking to see how much of that is already out of the box. And then if not, maybe just getting those two technologies to align more. When you're a standalone company, there's probably not as much focus on that, but now that they're part of the larger Citrix ecosystem, it gives us that opportunity to go get those aligned.
But one thing I think I'm aware of, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Unicon has a management platform already called
Yes.
Scout.
That's exactly right. But if I'm looking at it from a SEM perspective, that was a legacy technology. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Precisely. Okay. Any other final thoughts, Jeff or Era?
Yeah, I mean, I just have one. If anyone has any questions around licensing, anybody wants to dive deeper into any of these particular topics or acquisitions, don't hesitate to reach out to XenTegra. We have the ability to get, potentially SMEs on the Citrix side if need be to engage, but a lot of our architects already have pretty good knowledge around this. So if we need to, dig in any aspect, just let us know. We'd be happy to help.
Yep, absolutely. I would echo that. Well, thank you, Era. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for all the folks who are still on the call. Thanks for attending. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye now.
Take care, everyone.